Welcome to NFL Nexus. Let's talk about August 24th, 2019. For NFL fans, it's a date that's just burned into our memories. You remember exactly where you were, right? The Indianapolis Colts are playing some meaningless preseason game, and all of a sudden, phones just start going off everywhere. The news that breaks is so weird, so completely out of nowhere that everyone assumes it has to be a joke, but it wasn't. Adam Schefter drops the bomb. Andrew Luck, a guy everyone agrees is a once-in-a-generation talent, a quarterback at the absolute height of his game, is retiring at 29 years old. The scene that followed was just surreal. As the news spread through his own stadium, his own fans booed him off the field. And just like that, one of the most promising careers in modern football history was over.
I mean, it is still, without a doubt, one of the most shocking moments in sports history. This wasn't just some random player calling it quits. This was Andrew Luck, the #1 pick, the guy who was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning, a 29-year-old who had just thrown for nearly 4,600 yards and 39 touchdowns, and then gone. For years, we've all just kind of accepted the official story he gave at that tearful press conference. But recently, a whole new story has come out from inside that locker room, and it paints a much, much darker picture. So what if the story we all thought we knew isn't the whole truth? In this explainer, we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so before we can even get to the bombshell claim that changes literally everything, we have to rewind. We've got to go back and establish the narrative that, for years, has been accepted as the gospel truth in the NFL world. Let's take a look at the official story of why Andrew Luck walked away. This timeline really just highlights the insane whiplash of it all. So in 2017, his career is hanging by a thread. He's out for the entire season with this really serious shoulder injury. People were legitimately wondering if he'd ever be the same. And then comes 2018, and he doesn't just come back, he has the best season of his life. Absolutely incredible. Over 4,500 yards, 39 touchdowns, comeback player of the year, he was back. But then, summer of 2019, these reports start popping up about a nagging calf and ankle injury. Seemed like no big deal at first, but it just wouldn't go away. And then, late August, with zero warning, poof, he was gone. The difference between that amazing 2018 season and the sudden retirement just months later is what made this whole thing so hard to wrap your head around.
The reason they gave, and the one he gave, was burnout. The official story was that he was just mentally and physically cooked. And if you think about it, it made sense. I mean, think about the toll the game took on this guy. Over his career, he had a lacerated kidney, multiple concussions, a torn ab, and that's before the shoulder that basically got shredded and stole a year of his life. And now, this new ankle injury was stopping him from even getting ready for the season. The story was that it created this soul-crushing cycle. Get hurt, go through hell to rehab, come back, get hurt again. He was just trapped in it.
And this quote, this really captures the official story. This is the man we saw at that press conference. He looked broken, exhausted, like he was just over it. He talked about being stuck, about how the game he loved wasn't fun anymore because of the constant pain. It was a really powerful and honestly a very convincing explanation. And for 5 years, that was that. Case closed. A sad ending, for sure, but one that we all kind of understood.
But now, all these years later, a former teammate has come out with a story that basically takes a sledgehammer to that entire narrative. And that brings us to the real reason we're here today, a bombshell claim.
What if the burnout, the pain, the endless cycle of rehab, what if all that was real, but it was only part of the reason? What if it wasn't the final straw that broke the camel's back? What if something else happened behind the scenes, a confrontation that forced his hand and left him with no other choice?
So the person dropping this bombshell is Eric Ebron, and it's really important to know who he is. This isn't some guy from the practice squad. Ebron was a Pro Bowl tight end for the Colts. He was right there in the locker room for both the 2018 and 2019 seasons. In fact, he had the best year of his entire career catching passes from Andrew Luck during that magical comeback season. So he had a front row seat to everything, and he claims he knows the real story that nobody has heard until now. And this is where the story goes from sad to just shocking. Because according to Ebron, Luck's retirement wasn't some long thought-out process. No, he says it was the direct result of a high-stakes, behind-the-scenes confrontation, which brings us to the heart of his story, the jaw-dropping ultimatum.
Ebron claims this wasn't just a case of Andrew Luck deciding he'd had enough. He says the whole situation was forced by the Colts management. He describes a meeting where general manager Chris Ballard allegedly backed his superstar quarterback into a corner and basically gave him a choice.
Just let that sink in for a second. According to Eric Ebron, this is what was said, word for word. You're either playing this year
or we're moving on. Can you imagine being Andrew Luck in that moment? You are the face of the franchise, you're dealing with a really painful injury, and the guy in charge of the whole team is basically telling you to suck it up and play through it or you're done here. It's an insane game of chicken to play with a superstar's career.
And Luck's response, if you believe Ebron, was just as stunning and just as fast. It wasn't, okay, let me think about it. It was an instant decision right there on the spot. I'm not going to be ready. I'm tired of playing with pain. I retire. Ebron makes it sound like this was the absolute breaking point for a man who had just been pushed way too far. In this version of the story, Luck basically said, okay, you want to call my bluff? I'm out. And he walked away from it all.
Ebron came up with this really powerful analogy to describe how insane the whole situation was. He said Andrew Luck was the Ferrari, this priceless, high-performance machine. His ankle injury was the bad brakes. Ebron's whole point is, why would you take your most valuable asset, your ticket to winning, and threaten to smash it into a wall just because it isn't perfect right now? Why not just give it the time it needs to get fixed? From a pure business perspective, the ultimatum, if it happened, makes absolutely zero sense.
Now, it would be easy to just write this off as one guy's crazy story. But Ebron's claim gets a lot more believable when he backs it up with his own personal experience. He argues that what allegedly happened to Luck wasn't a one-time thing, but it was actually part of a pattern of pressure from the front office, which leads us to his own horror story.
Just look at this list of injuries. This is what Ebron says he was playing through during that same 2019 season. A torn abdomen, torn adductors. He claims they rushed him back from sports hernia surgery just to get him into camp. Bone spurs. And this is the wildest part. A ruptured ligament in his ankle that was so bad he had to get fluid drained from it every single week just to be able to play on Sundays. I mean, this is so far beyond the normal aches and pains of football. This is a medical nightmare.
So finally, after 11 games of what he calls pure agony in that 2019 season that was already a disaster after Luck left, Ebron says he went to the general manager, Chris Ballard. He told him everything. He said, I can't go anymore. My body is just completely shot. I need to have surgery. And this was the alleged response from the GM. Not sympathy, not concern, but this gut punch accusation. So you want me to tell the team you quit on them? In the world of the NFL, there is no word worse than quitter. It is the ultimate insult. It means you're selfish, you're not tough, you're letting everyone down. Ebron claims that this accusation basically ruined his reputation and ended his career with the Colts.
Okay, let's just pump the brakes for a second and really think about what we've heard. We have a massive allegation from a source who was right there when it all went down. But at the end of the day, it's still an allegation. So we have to look at this from all sides. Is this a bitter ex-player who's just trying to get revenge? Or is this a whistleblower finally telling a story that needed to be told? Let's try to weigh the evidence.
All right, this is where you have to be the judge. Let's break it down. The case for believing Eric Ebron is pretty strong. Number one, and this is the big one, he was there. He was a Pro Bowl player on that team, not some outsider. Two, his own story about being pressured to play hurt. That's powerful, first-hand evidence of a potential pattern. It makes the Luck story seem less like a one-off. And finally, his story actually provides a direct cause for what was a completely baffling event. It answers the question, why then? Why so suddenly? Now, the case for being skeptical, it's also really strong. First, Ebron and GM Chris Ballard do not like each other. Ebron has publicly called him the worst GM ever, so this could just be a revenge story. Second, the Colts and Ballard have never said a word about this, and no other player from that team has come forward to back up this specific story about Luck. And finally, you have to ask the big question. Why in the world would a GM whose job depends on winning just push a top 5 quarterback out the door? It would be career suicide. So you've got to decide which side you find more convincing. So, in the end, whether you believe Ebron's story or you don't, his claims just force us to look at the entire Andrew Luck saga in a new way. It completely changes the lens through which we see his decision and what his real legacy might be. Which brings us to our final section, a new legacy. The fallout from Luck's retirement, no matter the reason, has been huge, and it's undeniable. This QB carousel is brutally accurate for any Colts fan. I mean, since 2019, they have been stuck in quarterback purgatory, just churning through a new guy almost every year. From guys like Jacoby Brissett, to old veterans like Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan, to trying to fix Carson Wentz, they've been on a desperate search for the very thing they let walk out the door. The ripple effects have been massive for that franchise. And if what Eric Ebron says is true, it fundamentally changes the whole narrative. It's no longer just a sad story about a great player whose body and mind just couldn't take it anymore. It becomes a story about empowerment. It turns into the story of a player who drew a line in the sand, who chose his own future health over the demands of his team, and took back control from a system that allegedly wanted him to sacrifice his body for a short-term win. Which leaves us with this one last, really fascinating question to think about. For years, we've all looked at Andrew Luck's retirement as one of the great tragedies in sports, a huge what if. But if this new story is true, maybe we've been looking at it all wrong. Maybe it wasn't a tragedy at all. Maybe, just maybe, it was a quiet, personal triumph. What do you think? Was Andrew Luck pushed out, or did he leave on his own terms? Let us know your theory down in the comments. And hey, if you found this deep dive interesting, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to NFL Nexus for more. And don't forget, a great way to help support the channel is by purchasing our coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, even for adults. You can find them through the link in the description or just scan the QR code on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.